Okay, I know I'm late to the party, but a few nights ago, morbid curiosity led a few friends and I and our moms to see Snow White, and I have a few little thoughts about it. So we're going to dive into the 4 C's: the controversy, the costumes, the contrived music, and the conclusion. Now we'll start by making me the 712th YouTuber to discuss the controversy. It all began back when Disney cast Rachel Aloysius Zegler in the part of Snow White. I don't know what her actual middle name is, but my phone is busy recording, so I can't look it up. We'll go with Aloysius for now. I thought it was a pretty solid casting choice. She's got singing chops, she's got acting chops, she had just become a relatively big name, and she looked not all that dissimilar to Snow White. Though some may say the first controversy arose when several feverishly enraged people bemoaned the fact that her complexion was not in fact Snow White. However, in the origin story, she's named Snow White because she was born in a snowstorm, not because of the ghoulish, ghost-like Tim Burton-esque appearance of her skin. So, you know, to that controversy, it was like, cry me a dang river. But further controversy mired the lead up to the film when Rachel behaved like a bit of a loose cannon. I have a feeling these fingers are going to get a cramp by the end of this video. Here is the moment when the public started to turn against her.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There is a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Yeah. Weird.
Wow, how normal. Honestly, she was like a 20-year-old girl at this point. Pretty sure most 20-year-old girls of this generation would agree that like a guy watching you and waiting until you're unconscious to kiss you is weird. And mind you, she didn't call it egregious. She didn't say that fans of the original should flog themselves for penance. She just said weird. Now the issue is that she's the star of this movie, and from a PR standpoint, she should pretend to like Snow White in order to come off as quote-unquote grateful to play her. Then you have this clip.
People will assume it's a love story just because like we cast a guy in the movie. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby.
Which is probably my least favorite, mainly because I'm not a fan of punching down, and she is more famous than this guy, and he ended up playing a fairly big role and doing a great job. I thought the romance in this movie was pretty cute. She and the guy save each other, he doesn't turn on her or backstab her, gets a lot of screen time, but he's also not the main point of her story. Stop what? Can you be quiet? Now, Rachel had more to say. She exhibited a bit of a rude tude when speaking during the SAG-AFTRA strikes.
If I'm gonna stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess, I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed online.
Should she have said that? I don't know. It's really hard to speak confidently and effectively and appropriately on the spot. Take my sister, for instance. She had years of pageant training. She was Mrs. Ohio, Mrs. American, Mrs. World, and still gets flustered when I ask her a simple question like, what do you have against rhinos? She has a weird thing. Okay, we're gonna do a little experiment. I'm going to ask a question, and I want you to immediately pause the video and answer in an articulate, effective, and unoffensive manner. How do you feel about the current Hollywood social climate and the fairness as it pertains to streaming platform pay structure? She's just a normal 20-ish-year-old girl. She's still a few years away from her brain being fully developed. When I was a 20-year-old girl, I told people that I wanted to be the single mom to 8 IVF babies that I was gonna raise in an RV. When my mom was 20, she bought a grizzly bear, which wouldn't come out of the cage, and so she got a full refund, which I feel like was fair. I don't remember what I was talking about. I think the difference between her and other big stars around her age is that she didn't grow up in Hollywood. She was just literally a small town high schooler when Steven Spielberg plucked her from obscurity to star in West Side Story. Stars who were raised in Hollywood have years of PR training before being thrust in front of hundreds of millions of people. A fun little example is look for instance at Sabrina Carpenter's PR strategy.
How do we feel about scandalizing the Catholic Church a little with Feather?
Gotta go, girl, gotta go.
I mean, we love it though.
Compared to Chappell Roan's numerous snafus. One's been in Hollywood for years and one was just thrust into the limelight. Now, most recently, Rachel had a very passionate response to the election, to which a PR savvy person would say like,
oh, you don't want to risk losing half your audience.
But again, like half of all the college age girls I know posted essentially the exact same thing the day of the election. So if you look at her through the lens of a normal girl, is it really that shocking and unusual of a thing to say? In general, I think the controversy surrounding her is just a little bit overblown. It started out as like, I think we were all just bored and needing someone to hate, and Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni weren't picking on each other yet. And then in the end, we couldn't really remember why we hated her. We all just decided to hate her. Next, we have the 7 dwarves controversy. Now, some people were incensed at the idea that they would cast 7 little people as the dwarves, some people being Peter Dinklage, which upon listening to what he said, I do see his point. While other non-Peter Dinklage little people actors were angry at the notion that no little people may be cast. In the end, they cast one little person as the voice of Grumpy and one as a bandit. And I can't say what should have been done here, but what in the uncanny heck were these egregious CGI beings? They were abhorrent to my eyes. But they did end up growing on me. I think I'm just easily endeared by ears like that. Now on to my favorite topic, costumes. costumes. They were done by the very talented Sandy Powell, who is responsible for birthing this 8th wonder of the world. Now let's delve into the dress. Some people online were not a fan, but I actually liked it. Along with everything else Snow White wore, the zigzag lacing, oh, we love a zigzag lace. I liked it much better than the 2017 Belle dress, and I liked it much better than this dress, which I made out of curtains during the pandemic while I lived in my RV without 8 IVF babies. You know, that really was my Snow White era, because I basically just hung out with animals and was acutely aware that if I picked the wrong apple at the grocery store, it would kill me. But anyway, the dress was not quite as good as Carolina Zabrowska's Snow White dress or the indescribable costumes from Mirror Mirror, which can we just take a second to, oh my gosh. Yeah, I liked it. I especially liked that they stayed true to the vibe of the original while making it more sensible to the era in which it takes place. For instance, Snow White's hair is short in the original because, as you recall, that was the style in the 1930s. I don't know, I said that as if I assume you were there.
As you recall.
Remember the 30s? We were all smoking out long cigarettes and eating asbestos for breakfast and cut my hair like this? Yeah, this just doesn't really go with 16th century Germany, and this movie kind of explains it by the evil queen cutting off Snow White's hair out of like jealousy or something, which that scene drew the greatest response of horror out of my theater than any other. Mind you, my friends and I were the only ones there, and 3 of them are cosmetologists. Another fun detail is that a skirt that doesn't match the top would have really happened in like any era. So in this movie, the yellow is actually an underskirt with a blue overskirt that gets ripped away by some deviant tree roots, which I thought was pretty cool. If I had to nitpick, I would say I'd rather the skirt be like a rich gold brocade as opposed to that shiny tulle. The townspeople had great outfits, if lacking a little bit of structure, but I love a costumer who's not afraid of some era-appropriate headwear. Gosh dang it, balls in your court, Bridger. The evil queen, let me say, I loved her stained glass crown and her general silhouette, but the sequins kind of took me out of it. I wish they'd relied more on gemstones to give her sparkle, like in this look, but this, paired with the pageant glam and the falsies, just felt a little too glaringly modern for me. Personal preference. Then there was Jonathan. Here we have a frayed blazer over a plaid hoodie, cut just a few inches below my comfort level, paired with a nice little D-bag chain, resulting in a look that makes me want to mail my eyeballs to a landfill. If I had to give an overall rating to these movie costumes, I'd do 6.97 out of 10. He really dragged the average down. And then if we want to compare these costumes to other costumes that Sandy Powell herself has done, such as the breathtaking 2015 Cinderella, the way it plays daringly with size, sparkle, and era dabbling in a way that doesn't make me enraged. Era dabbling usually makes me insufferable to be around after I've seen it. And then you have the absolute fever dream that is Orlando, which I got from the library when I was 12, and I remember watching it thinking, what the H is my little homeschooled self doing watching this right now? But I couldn't stop watching because it was that stunning. And these, in comparison with those, do feel a little less inspired, but it's gotta be so hard designing costumes for a story that already has such iconic, award-winning costumes associated with it just in the last 15 years. For instance, Snow White and the Huntsman, which won an Oscar for its costume design, and Mirror Mirror, which won both the Best Costume Oscar and the award for costumes I most want to recreate but will never have the guts to. Now moving on to the contrived music. Now the music sounded eerily familiar. I think it was about 3 minutes in when I said to myself, this sounds a lot like The Greatest Showman. And then Courtney turned to me and said, this sounds like The Greatest Don't write on her. Courtney also said it sounded like The Greatest Showman. So today, on a whim, I look it up, and when I found out it was the same people who did the music for both, the scream I throat. Now listen, I don't know why I so dislike The Greatest Showman. My disdain for it has been a strain on many of my interpersonal relationships, both familial and platonic. And when I tell you my boyfriend and I would have the most perfect harmonious relationship, if not for our views on The Greatest Showman, Lord of the Rings. When I'm talking about music, it is important to note, I'm not a professional musician. I'm the only person in my family who never has been, but yeah, to me, the songs in Snow White just sounded like remix, copy, and paste of Greatest Showman songs. To its credit, there was one song, I think called Princess Problems, that featured a beat which was ripe for seated kick lines. And there was another song that I cannot remember one note of, but I know it was good for lyrical dancing, and again, we were the only ones in this theater. Hi-Ho was obviously a bop, as was Whistle While You Work. Okay, but was it just me, or did she do nothing during that? I think she swept for like a total of 1 second, which, like, earn your keep. You're a house guest. And, might I add, a prolific mopper, and you're just gonna let them do all the work. It was giving older sibling who's the overseer, while us younger siblings do all the work. I wish desperately that they had featured Someday My Prince Will Come in some capacity, even if it's just instrumental, because like, that song is so iconic and the melody is so beautiful. But in its stead, we had the obligatory Girl Decides to Be Brave anthem, except unlike its counterparts, Let It Go, How Far I'll Go, and Defying Gravity, this one simply did not slap. But you know, that's just personal preference. Like everything in this video. One undeniable fact, though, is that Rachel Zegler can sing. And Gal Gadot, I mean, considering prior to this, all we heard from her was that ever heartwarming, imagine there's no heaven. I'd say I was pleasantly surprised. One other teensy pet peeve I had with the movie is that its slogan is fearless, fair, brave, and true. And fearless and brave mean the same thing. You don't need to say both. Like, the live-action Cinderella's catchphrase is, have courage and be kind, and the makers of Snow White were like,
Bet you we can say the same thing. in double words. Girls fair, brave, and true.
In conclusion, how bad was Snow White? Not very. I know, that's not what you wanted to hear. It's way more exciting to listen to people trash things, but in my defense, I was very harsh on his outfit. But in general, the costumes were pretty good, the music was the definition of meh, and the controversies were a little overblown. Was it a complete slap in the face to the original? Well, Snow White is very special to my mom, as it's the first movie she ever saw in theaters, and hopefully not the last. And she really liked this version. Would I ever watch it again? Well, if I had kids, I could see myself putting it on the screen and then sitting on the couch next to them, fiddle farting around on my phone while it plays. Because in the end, it's a kid's movie. It's not that deep. I don't know why we're all making videos about it. I don't know. It was a certified okay movie that was completely unremarkable. Like, so unremarkable, I don't know how I just made a whole video remarking on it. I would like to know your thoughts though. Go ahead and comment. I can't believe you haven't pooped on me yet. By the way, this is Gabrinzi and Blissin. Okay. I hope I remember to press record.